delightful dream. My name is Shirley, and I was living what many would call a charmed life. I had married Jake, my college sweetheart. Our story was the sort most people only read about in romance novels. We were deeply in love, our lives orbiting around each other in a harmonious dance of affection and shared dreams. Our wedding day was, as cliché as it might sound, the happiest day of my life. We exchanged our vows under a serene sky, surrounded by friends and family who believed, as we did, in happily ever afters. The wedding was set in an idyllic countryside venue where lush greenery and blooming flowers provided the perfect backdrop to our love story. Even the sun seemed to shine a bit brighter, as if blessing our union. Jake looked at me as if I were the only person in the world. "You look amazing, Cheryl. Are you ready to be Mrs. Johnson?" I grinned back, my heart swelling with emotion. "I've been ready since the day I met you, Jake." Our honeymoon was a dreamy blur, an extended period of bliss that further solidified our bond. I never thought life could be this perfect. After we returned, reality gradually settled in, but it was a sweet reality. Both of us were busy building our careers, Jake in software engineering and me in marketing, but we made it a point to never let our jobs overshadow our relationship. Every evening after work, we'd cook dinner together, and every weekend was an opportunity for a new adventure. "Cheryl, let's try that new thigh place downtown this weekend. You up for it?" Jake would often come up with fun plans, keeping the spontaneity alive in our relationship. "Absolutely. A date night is long overdue," I'd reply, grateful for these simple yet meaningful moments that kept our love fresh and exciting. We settled into a cozy little house 2 years after our wedding, and that's when another dream started to take shape. A dream of expanding our family. "Jake, what do you think about having a baby?" I hesitated one night as we were cuddled up on the couch, a question I had been wrestling with for a while now. He looked at me, his eyes widening with a joy I hadn't expected. "I was just waiting for you to be ready, Cheryl. I think it's time." And so it was time. I got pregnant, and I remembered the pure elation of holding the positive pregnancy test in my hand. It felt like another chapter was opening in our life. Another layer was adding itself to our shared story. "Oh, Jake, we're going to have a baby. Can you believe it?" I could hardly contain my excitement as I showed him the stick. His face lit up, and he picked me up in his arms and spun me around in pure elation. "I love you, Cheryl. We're going to be the best parents ever." I thought we were. I truly believed we would be. Looking back now, those were perhaps the last moments when our happiness felt invincible. It was as if we were standing on the pinnacle of a mountain, unable to see the treacherous slopes that lay hidden behind the clouds of our joy. Our love was strong. Our future seemed secure, and the arrival of a baby promised to make everything even better. Or so I thought. That's the problem with happiness. Sometimes it feels so complete, so perfect that you can't imagine it ever ending. But the harsh truth is, life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you, shattering your world into a million pieces. And that's exactly what happened to us, but we just didn't know it yet. 7 years flew by like a delightful dream, each year better than the last. Our daughter, Emily, became the axis around which our world spun. She was a cheerful, bright-eyed little girl who inherited the best parts of both of us, Jake's infectious laugh and my love for reading. She was curious, adventurous, and loved life with an enthusiasm that was contagious. During those years, Jake and I were no longer just husband and wife. We were parents, co-conspirators in the grand adventure of raising Emily. And what a joyful adventure it was. From her first steps to her first day at kindergarten, every milestone was a celebration. "Do you think she'll be all right? Her first day at a new school?" I remember asking Jake nervously as we prepared Emily's backpack with school supplies a night before the significant day. He looked at me with reassuring eyes. "She's got the best of both of us, Cheryl. She'll be more than all right. She'll excel." The morning of Emily's first day at school was filled with a mix of excitement and sentimental nostalgia. Jake and I stood there, teary-eyed, as we took photos of her in her school uniform, complete with a little bow that she insisted on wearing. "Mom, Dad, you're embarrassing me with all these pictures," Emily exclaimed, but her grin betrayed her true feelings. "We have every right to embarrass you. It's in the parents' handbook," Jake joked, snapping another picture. "All right, no more tears, both of you," Emily declared, putting on a brave face as she saw both Jake and me wiping away discreet tears. "I'll be back before you know it." "We know, sweetheart. We're just so proud of you," I said, hugging her tightly before watching her climb onto the school bus. As she waved goodbye from the bus window, I felt a mix of pride and bittersweet melancholy. Our little girl was growing up, stepping into a bigger world, a world that was beyond our home, beyond our protective embrace. However, around this pivotal time, we also faced another substantial life event. Jake lost his job due to company downsizing. He was a software engineer, brilliant at what he did, but sometimes life has a way of throwing you curveballs. "Shirley, don't worry. I'll find something soon. Meanwhile, we'll manage," he assured me when he broke the news. "I know we will," I replied, offering a smile of encouragement despite the worry churning in my stomach. "We've got each other, and that's all that really matters." I was grateful that my job in marketing was going well. I had been promoted recently, and the salary bump would help us stay afloat. But we had to cut back on some of the extras. Dining out, weekend trips, the small luxuries that made life a little more enjoyable. "We'll get through this, just like we've gotten through everything else," Jake said one evening as we sat down to a simple homemade dinner. "Absolutely. Love always finds a way," I replied, echoing our shared belief. We were still adjusting to the new normal. The reality of being a single-income family and the challenges it presented were new to us, but not insurmountable. Our love, our unity was supposed to see us through. That's what I believed, and that's why I was so unprepared for what happened next. Life, as I was about to find out, had other plans, and they were plans that would test the very foundation of everything Jake and I had built together. A few months after Emily started her first year of school, I got the call. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was in the middle of a meeting with my team at work when my phone buzzed. Seeing the school's name flash on the screen, my heart sank immediately. Excusing myself from the meeting, I answered the call. It was Mrs. Wilson, Emily's teacher. "Surely Emily is not feeling well. She's quite pale and complaining of a severe headache. I think you should come get her." Panic gripped me. "I'll be there as soon as I can, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you for calling." I hastily grabbed my bag, informing my colleagues that there was a family emergency. Rushing out of the office, I called Jake. He had the car and could get to the school faster than I could. "Jake, Emily is not feeling well. Can you pick her up from school right away?" The words tumbled out of my mouth in a rushed jumble. "I'm at a bar with my friends right now. I don't have time." "Go there yourself," he responded, his voice tinged with irritation, before abruptly hanging up. His words felt like a slap across my face. I stood there for a moment, stunned and disbelieving. Shaking off the shock, I knew I had to move quickly. Emily needed me. Wearing heels and a formal office outfit, I started running the 5 blocks to the school. Each step felt like an eternity. Each second stretched impossibly long as a flurry of worst-case scenarios flashed through my mind. Breathless and sweating, I finally reached the school just as an ambulance was pulling up to the entrance. My heart plummeted to my stomach as paramedics rushed into the building, my worst fears materializing right before my eyes. I ran inside, where Mrs. Wilson was waiting. Her face was a mask of concern and regret. "I'm so sorry, Shirley. We called the ambulance when she fainted and started convulsing." "Convulsing? Oh God, why didn't you call me sooner?" I exclaimed, overwhelmed with fear and frustration. "We didn't think it was that severe initially. She just seemed a bit off, and then it escalated so quickly. Her voice was tinged with guilt. The paramedics wheeled Emily out on a stretcher, her small face as pale as a ghost, her eyes closed. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to follow as they loaded her into the ambulance. I sat in the ambulance holding Emily's limp hand, praying that she would wake up and this nightmare would end. But deep inside, a horrible realization was creeping in. Something had gone terribly wrong, something that should have been avoidable. As we sped to the hospital, all I could think about was Jake's dismissive response, his inexplicable absence in our moment of need. Anger mixed with my fear, but there was no time to dwell on it now. Emily needed me to be strong, and so summoning every ounce of strength I had left, I prepared myself for what was to come. Yet nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the devastation that awaited me. Jake had said that love always finds a way, but as the ambulance siren wailed, cutting through the air like a mournful cry, I couldn't help but wonder, what happens when love isn't enough? What happens when life deals you a hand so cruel that it shatters everything you've ever believed in? I was about to find out, and it was a lesson I would never, ever forget. The fluorescent lights of the hospital were harsh and glaring, casting an unsettling glow on everything. As I rushed into the emergency room, following the gurney where Emily lay, a feeling of surreal detachment overcame me. It felt like I was floating above the scene, watching some terrible drama unfold that could not possibly be my own life. Doctors and nurses immediately swarmed around Emily, barking medical terms at each other as they moved with frightening urgency. A nurse tried to hold me back, saying, "Mom, you need to wait outside." I shook my head vehemently, tears streaming down my face. "That's my daughter. Please tell me she'll be okay." The nurse looked at me with a mixture of compassion and regret. "The doctors are doing everything they can. Please, wait in the waiting area." I found myself relegated to a cold plastic chair, surrounded by other anxious faces whose stories I neither knew nor could focus on. My hands trembled as I made another call to Jake, this time leaving a voicemail through gritted teeth. "Jake, you need to come to the hospital." After what felt like an eternity but was probably no more than 20 minutes, a doctor approached me. His face was somber, his eyes avoiding direct contact with mine. I stood up, bracing myself for what was to come. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Shirley. Despite our best efforts, we couldn't save her. Your daughter passed away due to a sudden brain aneurysm. It was too late by the time she got here." His words hit me like a sledgehammer, stealing the breath from my lungs. I felt my knees weaken and had to grip the back of the chair to keep from collapsing. No, this can't be happening. Are you sure? Please, check again." The doctor sighed deeply, his eyes finally meeting mine, filled with a sadness that mirrored my own. "I'm really sorry. There's nothing more we could have done." The room spun around me as I let out a wail, a guttural sound of pure, indescribable agony. Nurses rushed over, leading me to a more private area where I could grieve away from the prying eyes of strangers. Hours later, Jake burst into the room, disheveled and reeking of alcohol. "Where's Emily? What happened?" "In heaven," I replied, my voice devoid of any emotion, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within me. "What? Stop joking, Shirley. This isn't funny," he yelled, visibly agitated. I silently handed him the death certificate. His eyes scanned the document, widening in disbelief and horror. "No, this can't be." "But it is," I interrupted, my voice tinged with an anger and bitterness I'd never felt before. "And where were you?" "At a bar." He fell to his knees, covering his face with his hands as his body shook with sobs. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have gone. I should have been there." I looked at him, this man who had been my partner, my love, my life, and felt an insurmountable gulf open between us. "Yes, Jake, you should have." We both should have. But you weren't, and now she's gone. It was a cruel, unbearable reality, one that shattered the illusion of our perfect life. In that moment, the foundation of our love, our family, our very existence, crumbled into dust. We were two broken souls, haunted by the unbearable weight of what, ifs and could, have. And so, as I sat there staring at the ruins of our life, a chilling thought crossed my mind. Some things are so broken they can't be fixed, not even by love. And it was in that dark epiphany that the seeds of our undoing were sown. In the following months, the silence between Jake and me grew louder than any words we could have exchanged. We were still living under the same roof, but the walls of our home seemed to close in on us like a suffocating tomb. Every room was a graveyard of memories. Emily's laughter still echoed in the hallways, her drawings remained on the refrigerator, and her empty bedroom was a sanctuary neither of us could enter without breaking down. Jake's drinking escalated. He would disappear for days, ignoring my calls and texts. And when he did come home, he was a shadow of the man I once knew, consumed by guilt and alcohol-fueled anger. One evening, Jake staggered in, drunk and volatile. Still looking at those. Why don't you just throw them away? They're useless now, he slurred, his words tinged with bitterness. They're all we have left of her, I replied, my eyes welling up with tears. We can't just erase her from our lives. We've already lost her. What's the point? He raised his voice, knocking a vase off the table, shattering it into pieces. It felt like a metaphor for our lives, once whole, now irreparably broken. That's enough, Jake. You're spiraling and pulling me down with you. We can't keep doing this, I finally said, looking him directly in the eyes. And what do you suggest we do? Pretend like everything is fine. Move on. Is that what you're doing, moving on? He was almost yelling now, his face red and contorted in rage and anguish. No, I'm drowning, just like you. But I'm trying to survive. For Emily, for myself, even for you. But I can't keep both of us afloat, I snapped back, my own temper flaring up. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands, the fight draining out of him as quickly as it had ignited. I can't live like this, Shirley. I can't live with the guilt. I know, I whispered, my anger giving way to a bone-deep sadness. I can't either. It was a sobering admission, one that had been a long time coming. We were two wounded animals licking our separate wounds, incapable of offering comfort to the other. The enormity of our loss, our guilt, and our failure had driven an insurmountable wedge between us. A week later, we sat in a sterile lawyer's office, signing the papers that would formally end our marriage. As I scribbled my name on the dotted line, it struck me how easily a partnership of years could be dissolved. A few signatures, and it was like we never existed. Jake looked at me, his eyes searching for something, forgiveness, understanding, a flicker of the love that had once been the cornerstone of our lives. But all I could offer was a sad smile and a quiet goodbye. And just like that, it was over. Our marriage, our family, our future, dissolved in a sea of ink and tears. I moved out the following week, my belongings packed into nondescript boxes, each item a relic of a past life I could no longer claim. Jake stayed in the house, a crumbling monument to his guilt and sorrow. We were both lost, set adrift by a tragedy neither of us could have foreseen or prevented. And though we once vowed to navigate the stormy seas of life together, we found ourselves shipwrecked, clinging to the debris of our shattered dreams, unable to save even ourselves. As I drove away, I couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror at the shrinking silhouette of the home we'd built, now a hollow shell, devoid of life or love. And as it disappeared from view, I realized that sometimes, no matter how much you love someone, there are burdens too heavy to carry, wounds too deep to heal, and tragedies too immense to overcome. We had loved and lost, But it was the losing that had undone us. Love, it turns out, was not our savior, but our casualty, another victim in a senseless tragedy that left no winners, only survivors. And as I drove further and further away, I wondered if survival was a victory or just another form of defeat. It was a cold, crisp morning when I found myself standing outside my new apartment, a 2-bedroom place in a different part of town. The moving van had just left, and I was surrounded by boxes, each one a capsule of a previous life that felt both intimately familiar and distant. As I began unpacking, I came across Emily's favorite stuffed animal, a little pink bunny she'd named Fluffy. Holding it to my chest, I felt an overwhelming wave of sorrow wash over me. This was one of those moments, a clear delineation between the life that had been and the life that would be. I put Fluffy gently on the sofa, almost as if reserving a space for Emily in this new chapter. Days turned into weeks, and then months. I returned to work, where my colleagues tiptoed around me, not sure what to say. Life moved on, and so did I, but there was always an undercurrent of sadness, a missing piece that could never be replaced. One evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jake. "Can we talk?" it read. My thumb hovered over the delete button for a moment, but then hesitantly I replied, "Okay." We agreed to meet at a cafe, neutral territory where the ghosts of our past wouldn't haunt us as strongly. When I saw him walk in, I was struck by how much he'd changed. He looked older, more worn, but there was also a clarity in his eyes that had been missing for a long time. "Shirley," he began, taking a deep breath as he sat down. "I've started going to meetings. Been sober for 2 months now." I looked up surprised. "That's good, Jake. Really good. I'm proud of you." He nodded, his eyes moist. "I had to, for Emily. I know it won't bring her back, but I can't keep destroying myself and everyone around me." "I wish you'd realized that sooner, but I'm glad you're taking steps now," I replied softly. There was a heavy pause, filled with unspoken regrets and what ifs. Finally, Jake spoke again. "I know we can't go back, and I'm not asking for that. But I do want to apologize for everything." "And I accept your apology," I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "But you're right. We can't go back. We're different people now, shaped by experiences that have, for better or worse, changed us fundamentally." Jake nodded, understanding and regret mingling in his gaze. "Yeah, shattered but not broken, right?" I gave a small smile at that. "Exactly." After that day, Jake and I went our separate ways. We remained distant but friendly. Two people bound together by a shared history but traveling down different roads. I heard from mutual friends that he continued attending AM meetings and even started volunteering at a local charity. As for me, I threw myself into my work and spent time rebuilding relationships with family and friends. Life was far from perfect. There were nights when the pain was unbearable, moments when I questioned the very point of going on. But during those dark times, I found solace in the belief that even shattered glass can catch the light in a million different ways, creating something new and beautiful from the ruins. In some strange way, my tragedy had given me an unasked for gift, a perspective on what truly mattered. It had stripped away the superficial worries that had once consumed me, laying bare the core of who I was and who I wanted to be. As time went on, I took up painting as a form of therapy, capturing landscapes filled with light and shadows, each stroke a testament to the complexities of life. Emily became my muse, her memory infusing each artwork with a poignancy that often left me drained but somehow lighter. In one of these paintings, I depicted a sunrise, the sky bursting with hues of orange and gold, breaking through a cover of dark, brooding clouds. It was a visceral representation of my life, marred by tragedy but also filled with moments of breathtaking